This video is sponsored by Surfshark. It must be said that Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso didn't exactly end on the best of terms. Despite being, in my opinion, the best driver lineup outside of the top 3 teams, and taking Alpine to a best of the rest finish in the Constructors, Ocon had plenty to say about his departing teammate after their 2 seasons together. In an interview to this French website, which I will not try to pronounce to not offend any of my French viewers, when asked about the end of season tension between him and Fernando, Esteban said, "Of course, I was disappointed by his comments in the press and not internally. We didn't have any discussions about any of that. I will keep the respect I have for him. It's good that he is going to Aston Martin and that we're going our own way. Honestly, the work was 98% on my back and 2% on his. I was overworked. I did all of the development on the simulator, the marketing trips." The tension between Ocon and Alonso has been building up all season, and it's quite interesting to ask which teammate partnership ended worse, Ocon and Alonso or Ocon and Perez. It really is a tough one, although I'd probably still give the slight edge to Ocon and Perez. This is now beginning to be a pattern with Esteban, and the problem is, with Checo and Fernando, the tension kind of came out of nowhere, being that they didn't really have a prior relationship, and it just seemed to be one of those classic F1 tales of 2 selfish drivers not wanting to yield to their teammate and not caring if that came at the cost of the team. However, whilst both of those fractious relationships kind of came out of nowhere, this got me thinking, given that before they've even turned a wheel as teammates that there's already some kind of bad history between Ocon and Gasly, is it almost inevitable then that whether it's in 2023 or 2024, that once again this partnership is almost destined to combust? Now, the one thing that definitely would help Alpine not to combust is Surfshark, who are the sponsor of today's video. Surfshark is a virtual private network that allows you to be fully protected on the internet by changing your internet IP and hiding your location. There are countless benefits that Surfshark provide, like protecting your data, blocking ads whilst you're browsing, and also allowing you to access content that might not be available in your country. So for example, during F1 preseason testing, I was out in Bahrain, and whilst I was out there, I wanted to catch up with all of the Premier League games on the Sky Sports channel, but because they don't have the broadcast rights to show the highlights outside of the UK, those videos just weren't there. No problem, however, because with Surfshark, in only a few clicks you can connect to a server in the UK, refresh the page, and now I can watch all of the videos that weren't available. That's just one of many benefits, and during the holiday period, between the 1st of November and the 31st of December, Surfshark are offering a special deal. If you use my promo code ALDAS or click the link at the very top of the description, you can now get 85% off with an extra 3 months for free as well. And of course, there is still a 30-day money-back guarantee if you decide to change your mind. It's a great deal, so once again, a big thank you to Surfshark. Esteban's checkered past with his teammates all stems from the fact that he is one of the most relentless drivers on the grid. The problem is, just like all drivers, Ocon's greatest strength, his tenacity, his fighter mentality, it can very easily become a weakness when the pressure to beat your teammate can begin to cloud your judgment. Ocon understands just how quickly being an F1 driver can disappear. I mean, at the end of 2018, it really was all over for him. After his first 2 full seasons in F1, despite doing a great job against Checo, when Lawrence Stroll bought Force India, one of the reasons was to give Lance a seat. And even though Lance clearly wasn't as good as either Ocon or Checo, Ocon had to make way and even spend the 2019 season out of Formula 1. His journey to F1 was a lot more difficult than pretty much 80% of the grid, as he's one of the very few drivers to come from a non-motorsport related family and also a middle-class background. What this means is that it doesn't matter who's in the other car, even if it's his teammate, he will fight them just as hard because it feels as though he needs to validate and overcompensate that he deserves to be in Formula 1 and that he won't be a pushover for anyone. The problem is, when you're racing against drivers like Checo and Alonso, both of those drivers can be just as stubborn as Ocon. And when you have two drivers fighting and hell-bent on not yielding to the other, inter-team tension and crashes are inevitable. In the 2 years with Checo, there were multiple crashes in Baku, Hungary, Spa, Singapore, and even a team orders row in Canada 2017. What really stands out about all of those incidents is that usually when battling against a teammate, you naturally give them a little bit more room than the other drivers. But with these two, it was almost deliberate how they wanted to squeeze each other even more to make the other back out so that they could show their mental superiority over the other. With Fernando, right from the beginning of the 22 season, and that fight that they had in Jeddah, as good as it was, and it was brilliant to watch, it just felt like already there was some underlying tension from both drivers to not look weaker than the other. That then led to the other incidents like Ocon's aggressive defense in Hungary, where by focusing on Fernando so much, he left the door completely open for Lewis. And then of course the sprint in Sao Paulo, where they almost crashed twice in just one lap. Now, I want to make it very clear that this isn't me pinning the blame solely on Ocon for every single last incident. Checo and Fernando more than gave as good as they got, and in some cases they were fully at fault for the incidents. But whilst there's always two sides to a fractious teammate pairing, when a partnership does go over the edge beyond the point of repair, Esteban just doesn't seem like the type of character to be able to put his ego aside and prevent a partnership from ever getting to that point in the first place. On days where your teammate is quicker, sometimes it's better to take the L so that you can preserve that teammate relationship and trust within your team. Esteban to me has done a great job to maximize his talent and the cars that he's been given, but I do think that some of those results are coming at a cost of building a reputation as perhaps a bad teammate and someone who will always put his own interests ahead of the team's. In Formula 1, how you play the political game can be very important for your image and also your future prospects if you want to go to another team. Now, I am not saying that he needs to become a pushover waving teammates through because, again, his fighter mentality is partly why he's in Formula 1 and why he's been able to survive whilst many other drivers who mentally were a lot weaker have not. But he is so relentless in his pursuit of not wanting to get done over by a teammate that I think sometimes it's detrimental to the overall team dynamic and also his perception as a driver. This is why I am so intrigued by Alpine in 2023 and their lineup of Ocon and Gasly. Alpine are in an interesting position because last season I actually think they were very lucky to finish 4th. Not in the sense that they capitalized on other people's mistakes and did a better job, but more so that the performance advantage of their car, and Ricciardo being terrible, basically gave them a buffer in terms of how many points they could lose and still finish best of the rest. However, if the likes of McLaren and Aston Martin get their act together both on and off the track, you can't count on that performance buffer to still be there in 2023. That is why how well Ocon and Gasly will work together for the team will be even more important, and how the Alpine management will also handle them will be equally as important. In Ocon and Gasly, I just can't shake the feeling that history is bound to repeat itself. You've got two drivers that in some way already have a history of not liking each other, and even if they say that they've squashed whatever beef they had, when the adrenaline is running in the car, those old emotions can easily be a trigger in the back of your mind for things to get toxic more quickly than it otherwise would do then with a teammate that you perhaps have no prior relationship with. Also, when I look at these two drivers individually, I think that both of them have a huge amount to gain or lose if they beat the other driver. Ocon needs to beat Pierre Gasly because he is the incumbent driver at Alpine, and also since the team backed him as their long-term driver with a long contract, he needs to justify it. You can't be labelled as the team's future and then get beaten in the very first season by your new teammate. When it comes to Gasly himself, he also needs to beat Ocon. For years, Gasly has shown glimpses of potentially being one of the best in the midfield, but I don't think we still really know how good Gasly is because being at AlphaTauri and stat padding against Tsunoda is not exactly a good benchmark. If Gasly really is a driver who top teams should consider, and who could be the leader in a race-winning team, he's got to prove it outside of the Red Bull program, and so beating Ocon is going to be a huge motivation for Pierre to justify that he's more than just a good midfield driver. On paper, Ocon and Gasly are a brilliant lineup. Whilst I'm still not convinced that there's enough superstar quality between them, you have got two drivers that are both Grand Prix winners, have both been on the podium multiple times between them, and for multiple seasons now have been fairly reliable point scorers for their respective teams. So again, on paper, they're one of the best lineups on the grid. But I think you've also got two very hungry, very self-motivated, and a little bit volatile drivers in a team that I just don't think is capable of managing them if things go wrong. In fact, I totally forgot to mention, guess who was the team principal of Force India when Checo and Ocon were having their 2 years of constantly crashing into each other? Otmar Szafnauer. And so, just as much as the drivers, Otmar also needs to prove that he can actually control them. And to be honest, whilst I would like to be proven wrong, I just don't think he can. This video is not supposed to be a look at how bad Esteban Ocon is. Esteban Ocon is a really, really good driver. Whether he deserves a place on the F1 grid is not even a conversation. But whilst I think that some of his character traits are the very reason for why he is such a good driver and has been in F1 for as long as he has, I think that those same qualities can sometimes cloud his judgment against teammates and actually do more harm than good. Luckily for him, Alonso was pushed out the team before things could really get toxic. But with Gasly coming into the team, whether it happens in 2023 or 2024, I just can't shake the feeling that these two blowing up at Alpine, resulting in one of them being kicked out, is almost inevitable. Well, there you have it, another video in the bag. Once again, a big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my code ALDAS or check out the link at the very top of the description to get a very special 85% off during the holiday period, which ends on the 31st of December. And once again, a big thank you to Surfshark. Now, if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.